Over in the pages of Marvel Comics' current X-Men series, the publisher is about to celebrate the annual Hellfire Gala, where Marvel's mutants come together to commemorate mutant kind and elect a brand new team of X-Men. But I think this year's Hellfire Gala is a little bit different than the last, as the anti-mutant group known as Orchis are set to close in on Marvel's mutants. We've already seen Orchis in action, sabotaging some of the X-Men's Krakoan drugs, as well as co-opting Tony Stark's Stark Unlimited company to build Stark Sentinels. My name is Arako Braddock, and today, let's go ahead and see if Marvel's mutants can survive their own gala in the pages of X-Men Hellfire Gala 2023 #1. But before we get deeper into the video, want to encourage you to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button over on this video. The fall of X begins here. The Hellfire Gala is always one of the biggest events of the season, but this year's will change everything for Krakoa. What is meant to be Mutant Kind's biggest night becomes their biggest nightmare as the fall of X begins. All your favorite X-Men are going to be left reeling after this one. Shocking revelations, stunning betrayals, horrifying tragedy, impossible deaths, and of course, the most glamorous looks of the year all in one cannot miss package. X-Men Hellfire Gala 2023-1 is written by Gerry Duggan, featuring artwork from an assembly of artists including Adam Kubert, Luciano Vecchio, Matteo Lolli, Russell Dauterman, Javier Pina, R.B. Silva, Joshua Cassara, Kris, Anka, and Pepe Larraz. The color artists for the issue include Rain Beredo, Ceci de la Cruz, Matthew Wilson, Erick Arciniega, and Marte Gracia. The letters are from Virtual Calligraphy. We have design from Tom Muller and J. Bowen. And there's a G.O.D.S interlude here, written by Gerry Duggan and Jonathan Hickman, featuring art from Valerio and colors from Marte Gracia. And here's a look at the cover of the issue coming in directly from artist Phil Noto. Really appreciate the way that Noto has arranged some of the elements of the Hellfire Gala in a collage, as well as the mysterious Nathaniel Essex over in the background serving as Dr. Stasis. Want to extend a thank you to Adventures in Poor Taste and take a look at some of the arts over in this title. So in terms of Marvel's large pantheon of artists in the issue here, I think for the most part, a lot of the contributors do a solid job contributing everything from Russell Dauterman's really kind of distinct and clean line to Javier Pina's really fascinating expressions here. It's difficult to see where one artist ends and another artist begins, and I appreciate that sort of collaborative effort that a lot of the artists take in handing off one sequence from another. Another standout of the series was Valerio page over with the G.O.D.S. Seeing how detailed and intricate his line can be is really interesting over in this series, as well as some of Joshua Cassara's contributions. This page that we have up on the screen is really fascinating as well, as in order to kind of break the panel border, some of these Stepford cuckoos in the guise of the Hellfire Gala are shown on this page. And just think that border sequence is really creative and shows that kind of effort that Marvel is taking for the Hellfire Gala. Some of these costumes are really intriguing as well, with Cyclops taking a dark look that recalls some of the elements of Brian Michael Bendis' X-Men run over in the issue. In terms of the writing on Gerry Duggan's script, the way this issue opened with Miss Marvel heading into the resurrection protocols of the X-Men was such a fascinating story point for the title. Over in recent X-Men comics, Scott and Jean have been having trouble over in their relationship, so watching Scott interact with Emma was also an intriguing way to open this series and explore some of those themes. Early on in the issue, it was really thrilling watching Kamala Khan interact with people like Professor Xavier, and she's got some really fantastic sequences with Rasputin 4 here. So really interesting and intriguing moments that are utilized really well in the space of the issue. I really have to give it to Marvel's editorial for coordinating so many individual plot threads and status quos throughout the series. There's been little pieces of the Iron Man and Spider-Man books that have all culminated in some of the plot elements over in this year's Hellfire Gala. This is a really big issue, and I appreciate that Gerry Duggan takes his time in order to introduce some of the elements of Orcus in the story. Towards the beginning, it feels like your standard Hellfire Gala, and some of the recent X-Men characters that are kind of featured prominently throughout this storyline have also been really focused on over in the main X-Men comic book. People like Sync, Talon, as well as Firestar get some really fantastic moments over in this title. And I think that this year's lineup of X-Men is one of the most fascinating, lineups of the team that we've seen in this sort of modern Krakoa era. So hope we get to see that maybe play out over in one way or another here. And again, I think Gerry Duggan really slowly takes his time to kind of amp up the threat of Orcus. And when the threat finally comes down here, this book does a fantastic job switching gears from being the bright and triumphant Hellfire Gala to one of the worst nights in the lives of the X-Men that I can possibly imagine. This issue gets so violent and really wrecks the foundation of Krakoa from a really fascinating place here. I can definitely see some readers not taking Fall of X seriously because Marvel has teased the foundations of Krakoa are beginning to crack in so many different spaces like Inferno. But I think if you kind of zoom out and take a look at the overall direction of the X-Men line and see how all these little elements brought to the destruction of Krakoa, the majesty of the issue is on display in full force. I especially think that if you take a look at some of those early House of X and Powers of 10 issues and you see how robust Orcus's operation is there, then you can definitely find some of the plot elements and seeds of this story. I love how kind of touch point and really important this issue is to series like House of X, Inferno, the Lives and Deaths of Wolverine miniseries as well. This is kind of in the forefront of the X-Men line. For the past couple of years, you can argue that Marvel's mutants have gone on these kind of story diversions that haven't had like a direct impact on some of the X-Men characters, bringing down kind of the whole foundations of Krakoa. But it really looks like this is the title to change that. There's some incredibly climactic confrontations that select members of Orcus have with characters like Iceman that end in really thrilling and really fascinating ways. And I think it's the last couple pages with Professor X realizing the full scope of what happened during this year's Hellfire Gala that really creates such a visceral impact. And I love the slow-moving nature of this issue, too. If you're reading it just right off the shelf here, it looks like just kind of a footnote and maybe some random, accidents that happen to the X-Men. But if you zoom out, take a look at Immortal X-Men and some of the other X-Men titles, you can really see so many of the pieces of Fall of X really start to come together. It's not one thing the X-Men did that led to this. It was a culmination of different mistakes that Xavier has made in the past. And throughout, I think, recent issues, especially in Immortal X-Men, we've seen Professor Xavier really shake some of the foundations of his resolve, even extending to series like X-Men Red. So I think just so many titles have led up to this storyline. And when we see the final few pages and get those final realizations from Xavier, I really felt that sense of catharsis needed in order to kind of stay engaged in some of these series as well. I really have to hand it to Marvel one last time for introducing Kamala Khan back into the series. While I do think it's a bit of a cheat for Kamala to come back from death so soon, at least Marvel had something up their sleeve with the idea of some of the Champions' memories from Cyclops being retconned back into his character. To me, that feels like more than a footnote, more than a plot point on this series, but a complex reason for why she's here in the first place. And Marvel doesn't waste any of the characterization on her either. Some of her interactions, not only with Professor X and Rasputin, but also with Jumbo Carnation, are just so sweet in this series. Firestar is the secret weapon of this issue. I don't want to say anything else. She's prominently featured on the cover and just has so many wonderful sequences here Jean Grey also has a few fascinating elements leading up to Fall of X, and getting to see where her status quo leaves off is just absolutely devastating here. So I really think that Marvel's marketing that was setting up that plot thread really did a great job kind of shaking those foundations and coming to a final status quo here. So at the end of the day, I think Marvel's Hellfire Gala is a fantastic issue that was absolutely needed to shake up the foundation of Marvel Comics' current X-Men series. Frankly, it felt for the past few years like the X-Men were never going to leave Krakoa and that they were too safe with some of the resurrection protocols. But with the events over in this issue kind of scattering the X-Men across the globe and introducing so many plot threads that have sort of been gestating in several Marvel comics for months, I feel like this line is in a better place right now than ever before. I want to know from you, did you love this issue of X-Men Hellfire Gala as much as I did? Let me know down in the comments below. I want to hear from you if you have any speculation on where Orcus is going to go next and what is just on the horizon over for Marvel's X-Men. While this is the Fall of X, it still feels like the beginning, or at least the middle point over in this series, as I don't think Marvel is going to let go all of the really fascinating plot threads they have dangling across all these series. Thanks so much for coming to check out our video covering this year's Hellfire Gala, and we'll be back to cover the next Hellfire Gala, which I hope happens eventually, and of course, we'll be here to cover all of Marvel's upcoming Fall of X books in the weeks and months to come. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.